All right, good afternoon and welcome to Kansas City Teacher Residency Presents Teacher Discussions. This is our first installment of this new series that we're featuring on Facebook just to give individuals opportunity to again learn more about the Kansas City Teacher Residency. And this afternoon we are presenting the Black Educators Initiative. My name is Vernon Birmingham. I'm the Talent and Placement Manager with the Kansas City Teacher Residency. And I am joined this afternoon with Charles King, who serves as the president and CEO of the Kansas City Teacher Residency. Charles, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here, Vernon.
Excellent, excellent. Glad to be here as well. Still in our quarantine state. However, this is a great opportunity for us to talk about the work that Kansas City Teacher Residency is doing throughout the Kansas City community. And today we're going to talk about the Black Educators Initiative and what that means for Kansas City students, Kansas City schools, and just the community as a whole. So with that said, let's start off talking about the state of Black educators in the country as it is now. We know in a whole there is a teacher shortage that is going on across America. So of course, with the teacher shortage, there's going to be vacancies all over within schools, both public and private. However, within that, we also know that there is a shortage of Black educators within our school system. So I guess let's start off talking about that piece right there and why there is a need for more Black educators.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is, unfortunately, is that there are fewer Blacks that are entering into teacher training programs, whether it be at like the undergraduate level or the graduate level or alternative pathways. And you know, there's a history behind it. There's a systemic history behind it that you can go down to K-12 and the K-12 experience within the African American community and the Black community. And then you can also look at just what states have put in parameters that states have put in place that have made it harder for teachers of color to be successful, and particularly Black teachers or Black individuals to become teachers. And then once you get through all of those hurdles, right? There's still like the hurdle of the staying in the classroom, right? And retention is also a challenge as well, just in general within education. And we know, you talk about the teacher shortage, you talk about even with COVID, how that has really hurt the teaching profession. For Black educators, you find that Black educators are leaving the profession at higher rates than even their white colleagues. And that is something you're seeing just nationally. And so when you look at the entire system as a whole, I mean, for people as an African American, like it's not a profession that is, finding that pathway to get into the is challenging. Sustaining through the program is challenging, and then staying in the classroom is a challenge. And so there's a real need to focus on, to keeping teachers of color, and particularly Black educators, in the classroom for our students, especially as we see the students of color increasing, and and what we know is that the data shows that like the power of a Black educator in a school and in a classroom is powerful.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That last one that you touched on there, because this research and statistics all show that even one teacher of color in elementary school greatly increases the likelihood that other Black students will graduate not only high school but even consider going to college. And that's an important stat when you consider that only 7% of teachers in public schools are Black. So that, like you said, kind of goes hand in hand in a sense. And sometimes I make the mistake of, specifically as we started this online series, with the assumption, just because individuals might jump on the page, they know what a teacher residency is or what Kansas City Teacher Residency is. So maybe let's back up a little bit and talk about the teacher residency, I guess a quick overview of what that looks like. What is the Kansas City teacher residency?
Yeah, so the Kansas City teacher residency is, I liken it to the medical residency experience, right? Like, so we, too often, right, like you never find a doctor that's going out to be with a patient and practice on their own without having adequate training. Even after going through 4 years of medical school, there's still what we call the residency experience. And so if you, in education, we want to make sure, like when we talk about like what are best practices that keep individuals in the classroom for a long period of time and help and really ensure that like teachers are feeling valued and supported. Like the residency model gets at that, right? So for KCTR, we didn't think of this model. This model has been around since the mid 2000s. And what this model does is that we look at placing individuals who are wanting to become teachers with a mentor teacher's classroom. And through that experience, that individual gets hands-on learning with a mentor who's effective, who knows best practices for kids, who has experience not only as an educator, but also experience in that school environment. And what we're doing with all of our residents is we're building their schema around the context where they're going to go teach. So all of your training will be at the school site or in the community where you will do your teaching experience. Whereas in other programs, what you find is that you might train in one environment or one context and then go teach professionally in a different context. And so when that happens, you're not set up for success to be as effective as you could be, versus being in a residency model, having that year of that experience. What also makes it a residency experience is the amount of time. So your training is a full year. You will be in this classroom for over an entire academic year. So you'll see how classrooms are set up. You will have parent-teacher conferences. You will know like what kind of meetings you will experience. You'll know what it's like to go away for a holiday break, a winter break, and then come back and start again in the spring semester. And you'll be able to close out with your students and go through all of testing. And that exposure sets you up for to understand like the life cycle of education and what happens each year. And so like for me, when I got into teaching, I thought I had a clue of what all that went into it, but it really took me 6 months to get a handle of not only teaching my content, but also all the other things that came with teaching, all the administrative tasks and all the other responsibilities that people don't talk about that happen in addition to the moments that you're in there in front of students. And so the residency experience provides that for you.
No, and I think that's very, very important. And, as you stated, your experience entering into education. And for myself, when I started teaching, 2 decades ago, I probably shouldn't say that too many times, but I entered into an alternative certification program because my bachelor's was not in education. However, I think the big difference is that residency year and having that mentor teacher that is walking side by side with you is important. And for me, being perfectly transparent and honest, if I didn't go back and teach at the high school that I went to, I would have failed. But the fact that I was there where I knew people who served as mentors in a sense, because they didn't want to see me fail, was crucial. So I think that is what stands apart. That's what stands the residency program apart from others, is the fact that they're going to work hard to ensure that you have a solid foundation. Like anything, if you have a solid foundation, you'll be able to withhold and stand a lot of things that come throughout the process. So you made mention of the residency program is not something that's new or created by KCTR, and there is a national center for teacher residency. And we're not going to get too much into that, but the Black Educators Initiative, which we're going to spend a lot of our time talking about, kind of comes from that. So, and for context, NCTR launched received a grant, a 5-year, $20 million grant to recruit, retain, and develop 750 Black teachers through the national network. And that is where KCTR kind of comes inside with that. So let's talk a little bit about the Black Educator Initiative and the thought process from your understanding behind that.
Yeah, I mean, NCTR, has been, part of their role in the teacher residency landscape is to really think broadly about, the teaching profession and how to make sure it's amplified both through like policies at level, the state level, but also thinking about, strategic initiatives that are supporting the work and supporting the growth of teachers in classrooms. And so the conversation around, the recruitment of teachers of color, that's been the conversation we've been talking about ever since KCTR has been a part of, affiliated with the National Center for Teacher Residency. We've always been talking about like, how do we make sure we increase the number of teachers of color? And then, over the last couple of years, we're really zeroing in on with Black educators and knowing like there's a specific need within all of teacher prep to really focus on increasing the number of Black educators. And so they received this grant and launched this work. And part of this work is, yes, the output, right? Like, how do we make sure that we're preparing and retaining 750 Black educators across the country? And the other part is around learning. And I think that's the most important part that NCTR is doing in this space, is really that over the course of these 5 years, gleaning from the work that's happening in individual programs, like what are the best practices that are working in recruiting Black educators, supporting Black educators through an entire residency program, and then ultimately retaining Black educators in the profession, with the hopes that this work can be informative to the broader landscape. So whether you're talking about traditional education programs, alternative certification programs, state, federal government, like how can this inform policy? How can this inform practices? If we're able to really get a grasp of what works within supporting Black educators as a large whole.
No, and that's good. And, one of the quotes I actually pulled from the NCTR website earlier, one of the big things within the BEI, the Black Educator Initiative, is to improve student outcomes by increasing student access to effective Black teachers. And that is the end game. And we're going to talk about that later. It's not just about, adding more Black teachers in the classroom, but we want effective teachers. And that's what the residency program is intended to accomplish. So again, thank you for joining us. If you're just tuning in, my name is Vernon Birmingham. I am the Talent and Placement Manager within the Kansas City Teacher Residency, joined by Charles King, who serves as the CEO and President. So we thank you for joining us this morning as we host our teacher discussions that's focused on the Black Educators Initiative. And if you are tuning in, feel free to, if you have any questions in particular, feel free to ask those in the comment section. If you see my head go down, it's because I'm monitoring the comment section. I'm not distracted by anything of insignificance. So with that said, some of the goals of the Black Educator Initiative, and sometimes you'll hear me say BEI. So let's talk about some of the goals that you and the staff have in place within the Black Educator Initiative.
Yeah. So for KCTR, we set a goal around recruiting and pretty much doubling the number of Black educators that we have coming in to our to our sixth cohort that we did in our fifth cohort. So so in cohort 5, we have 7 Black educators. For cohort 6, we wanted to double that number, to double that impact. Knowing that that's not enough, right? Like we want more, But we wanted to set a target of where we can grow and make a sizable difference. We also, so we're doing this, and I don't know if you want to dive into like the different initiatives that we're focusing in on at this point, but we're doing this, but we want to look to provide this to put in place supports that will make and leaving a previous job or leaving undergrad and coming into teaching more attainable, right? So there's the opportunities for scholarship dollars there that are resources available for Black educators who come into our program. There's offerings for emergency funding, because we know that like life happens, right, for all of us, right? Like, and we know that for what we know about just people of color, and for many Black educators, like the ability to tap into resources from family and extended family might not always, and so a financial impact that can really like take you out of the profession to go and find a lucrative career is a burden that we want to not have, right, and be able to remove that barrier. There's also supports for certification testing that are offered through this program. We also are looking for ways to enhance our recruitment and finding ways to recruit. And outside of a world outside of COVID, being able to focus in on historically Black colleges and universities, partnering with Panhellenic the Panhellenic Council and talking to their current undergrads and alums about the teaching profession and joining the residency program, finding ways through providing offering supports to mental health services. We know that this has been, I think, a growing conversation in the Black community around the self-care, mental health, and how being healthy is a critical component to being an effective educator and being sustained through the program. And so we really were, for KCTR, our priority was focusing on what are those barriers that we have seen that have risen up through our early years as an org, and how do we make sure that we help support those areas for not only our current residents, but then also future residents as well.
No, thank you for sharing all of that, and those are all very important initiatives or pieces of initiative. And we were going to touch on some of those things, but I think the biggest thing that you mentioned, and I think it's important to highlight, is it's not just about recruiting more Black teachers. I mean, that's an important part of course, but how do we ensure that these Black teachers remain in the field and want to remain in the field? And you highlighted, a few things there to ensure that we can do what we can on our part to any blind spots, any stumbling blocks, any of those things that might hinder that opportunity for them to remain in the program. I think is important to ensure that we're thinking about those things. So let's touch on a couple of those things that you mentioned, though. So one of the things that you highlighted was scholarships, and the Black Educator Initiative is providing scholarships for Black residents. What does that look like when we say providing scholarships?
Yeah, so this is money to offset tuition and fees that are incurred. So part of the KCTR model is that it's a 2-year master's degree. And so this is, we have a partnership with the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And through our partnership, every resident that comes to our program will walk away after 2 years with a master's degree in education. And part of our why behind it is that as educators, being not only have the residency year provides the competence to be effective in the field, but also that deep level of learning and having the theory of practice, so that when you are continuing and engaging with colleagues, that you understand like the core tenets and components and concepts. And so like that master's degree is a critical component. And while we do offer, we do provide guidance for all of our residents on how to make the degree affordable. The scholarship is an opportunity for Black educators to have additional access and opportunities to help support their educational career. And so this is like tuition, fees, any educational resources that are needed, if there are textbooks, et cetera, like that scholarship is available for you for that reason.
No, and that's important. And additional kind of context with that is, and again, we talk about burdens and things of the sort, and we understand that there are many individuals who have to make that tough decision for that residency year to leave a professional career where they might be making X amount of dollars. Now do a residency year where not only are you not getting paid, let's say $40,000, but you're getting paid $20,000, and the expectation of funding your college classes. So I think that scholarship piece is, again, one of those pieces that we have in place to help at least take away that anxiety piece of it for those who wish to utilize and apply for that opportunity. And there was a question in the comments asking, can you be married and receive this scholarship? And of course, the answer is yes. Being married, being single, it has no effect at all in receiving that scholarship once you apply for it. The only, I guess, the prerequisites that go with that are the things that's associated with just entering the residency program in itself, which includes a bachelor's degree, U.S. citizen, and things of the sort. So being married has no bearing on the opportunity to receive that scholarship opportunity. So the other thing that you highlighted, Charles, was the emergency funds. And this was something for myself, when I learned about it, I was like, you know what, that's interesting. I don't hear often of organizations saying, you know what, we're going to have emergency funds set up for you. Why was that important for KCTR?
Yeah. I say at KCTR, every year, with the exception of this year, because we're not doing as much driving, we had at least 2 to 3 incidents where there was car issues, whether it be like a tire gets blown out, or you need a car repair, or unfortunately where we had incidents where a resident's window was broken into, right? Like those are unexpected expenses that, with the stipend amount that's received, or the stipend that's received, and the living costs and expenses, right? Like that's an expense that you don't plan for. And,
right.
and so, what some may choose to do, right? Like is go off, you're like getting part-time jobs or figuring out other ways to pay for those costs, right? And so like the emergency funds is a helpful way to be supportive, to allow Black educators to be as narrowly focused on the residency year and what's happening that year, without limiting the other outside distractions, as a way to be supportive and helpful, right? Because we know like those, and I talk, my wife's in medical school, we talk about this all the time, right? Like it's for our Black residents, it's more, there is more that's happening externally as well as internally in the program. And there's the constant need to balance everything. And more so than you might find from their white colleagues. And that's not speaking, it's more generally and not necessarily specific, but we know that this to be the case. And like And if there's a way for, as a program, for us to like remove the barriers to allow for, you know, to allow for Black educators to have that space to really zero in and focus on themselves and prioritize this work so they can be the best teacher possible. You know, that's a benefit. Like that helps to keep people retained and invested, right? Like, because it is one less stressor that someone doesn't have to deal with.
Right.
Another element with emergency funds that came up was around, you know, just the, you know, the previous debts from colleges, like from like undergrad or other schooling, that's preventing individuals from getting a transcript. Like that, those are like, that's a real scenario. And without having, and we've had this happen in the past in our program where we've had to exit people from our program because they had a bill that was just too high to overcome. And we didn't, this was before we had emergency funds available. And so what happens is that a person who is, you know, right for a program, doing well for kids, would make an amazing teacher, but because of the system that we have in place and the barriers that colleges put up to get transcripts, like removes them from pursuing their dream. And those are, and we see that often, unfortunately. And so, you know, having this resource, this pot of money helps. And so, like, again, that's a stressor that someone has to think about. Or like people have gone on payment plans that are trying to repay over a period of time just so they can get their full teacher license. And so, like, you know, and for us, like, we don't, there, you know, similar to like the scholarship, the access to these resources, like there's no like income requirement. There are no like certain criteria other than like being in our program, identifying as being Black, African American, African origin, and then submitting like the application and going through like the internal process. Like it's a very, you know, we want to remove as many of the barriers as possible so that we can get the funds in hands to people to move forward. And that's like an ultimate goal with this.
No, that is all excellent. And thank you for highlighting that piece of it. Again, thank you for joining us. If you are just joining us, my name is Vernon Birmingham. I am the Talent and Placement Manager with the Kansas City Teacher Residency, been joined by President and CEO Charles King this afternoon in our teacher discussion series that's focusing on the Black Educators Initiative. This is a new initiative that launched within KCTR, you know, essentially this school year. As we utilizing the opportunity to assist Black residents within our incoming cohort 6 and portions of cohort 5 as well. So this is exciting new times as we continue to try to recruit and retain and develop more Black teachers within the Kansas City community. And again, if you're joining us, feel free, if you have any questions, to ask those in the comment box. So we've been talking about a few of these specific segments within the initiative here within KCTR. We talked about scholarships and emergency funds. You made note of something earlier that's very important, is the mental health services piece. And it's always been, for some reason, a stigma within the Black community about going to get mental support. And we're talking about now individuals who are leaving a particular career potentially. We do occasionally get individuals who are coming in right after college, but most of the time it's individuals leaving professional careers that they've been in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that have family, taking on school assignments and things like that. And there's a sense sometimes, not a sense, there is a reality that sometimes it's stressful and tough for individuals. So we have partnered with licensed therapists to be able to provide services within this grant. And I highlight that because, again, it's very important like you said, to ensure that you're taking care of yourself if you're going to attempt to take care and educate young people. And another thing that we talked about is when you take care of yourself, we're talking about specific affinity groups for Black residents. And we're going to continue to push the envelope there, but we've also been fortunate enough to have, I've always been real big on if someone's doing something really well, there's no reason to recreate the wheel. And there's some organizations within the community that we're starting to learn more about and partner with in that avenue. And one area that the initiative helps with is our partnership with Block, Brothers Liberating Our Communities. So let's talk a little bit quickly about that partnership and relationship with Block and how we're able to leverage them a little bit for our Black educators.
Yeah, so Block, Kansas City is, it's their focus is supporting Black male educators and really looking at the recruitment and retention of Black male educators. And Cornell, oh my gosh, I want to call him Cornell West. So Cornell, if you're watching, I knew your last name. I just want to call you Cornell West. I want to simplify you, brother. So, Cornell Ellis is the founding executive director of the org, and he has, set a vision and course of like, how do we recruit and retain Black male educators in Kansas City and across the metro? And he does this through, not only professional development, but also networking. And as a residency program, right, we know that we are one program in the city, and there are several other programs in the city, and not only and as teachers, like we want our teachers to be part of the community. And so having that partnership where KCTR is leveraging is sending our Black male educators to Block to engage in those programmatic supports in that network will help keep our Black male educators in the profession, right? And finding like their path within education. And so we have several members from KCTR cohort 1, Vincent Gundles and Gaston Woodland, who have been instrumental not only in the groundwork of Block, but then also being active participants in the work of Block through the years. And so those, they have KCTR, actually like KCTR and Block have a long-standing history and relationship together. And our hope is that, as we move forward in the future, like that partnership and relationship continues to grow. And know that as, part of this BEI work, like this is an important element, right? Because we know, it's one thing we talk about, like getting through the pre-service part of the program, but then once you are a Black educator, you're a teacher, and you're in the work, there are a lot of stressors that come with that, and you might find yourself in a place where you are the only Black educator on your grade level team, on your floor, in your department, and and having that community, whether it be within your school or outside of your school, and talking to other Black educators who understand your experience, right? Like that's where the key comes into, right? Like you want to find people who understand your experience, who've been where you've been, and who can relate to what you're talking about to help you stay in that work. And like for me, like that was essential. Like if I look back in my early years as a teacher, like who were my rocks? Like they were other Black educators who, we had our Sunday evening conversations that have led to like lifelong friendships. And so like those are, I call it like that space is important.
Good. So what, well, not what, but what is the length? What is the time, I guess, the timeline or the length for the Black Educator Initiative? Is this going to be going on for long time? Is it only this year or two? What are we looking at within the Black Educator Initiative and individuals who are thinking about joining the field?
So it's a great question, Vernon. So KCTR is a part of, so we are getting funded for the second year of the initiative, of the 5-year plan that NCTR has. And each year we submit a proposal on how we want to continue to support our Black educators at KCTR. And so we are submitting a proposal for year 3 later this month. And that year 3 will start in May/June. And then we'll have to submit another proposal for year 4 around the same time next year, and hope to get funding for that, and the same thing for year 5. So it's, we have 3 additional years for a possibility of funding. And so we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue this partnership with NCTR and receive funding. But it is something that, at least for another 3 years. But we don't know if if there'll be more that'll come after that, but we know at least for the next, 3 years, there'll be something available.
No, that's good, because I guess we look at, and if you're, again, not familiar with the way that it works within KCTR, there's a specific cohort each year. And right now we are recruiting for cohort 6. And for those interested, the application window is still open for cohort 6. And that window closes on March 26th. So if you're still contemplating, be sure to go to our website, kcteach.org, and apply. And we would love to start going through that process with you. But cohort 6 is essentially the first full cohort that the BEI funding has been working with regards to recruiting and that piece. And when we're using some of that funding within cohort 5 for that retention piece a little bit, helping out in areas. So the question that many may be wondering, and I've actually had this conversation before, but because there's such a need for teachers and Black teachers, and we really, really want Black teachers, does that mean that Black educators or potential educators automatically get in the program? And I highlight that only because, as much as we would love to have everyone, that is not the case. There is still a process that we go through. That process is no different what anyone else goes through. You apply your screen, and you participate in a phone interview. Then if you successfully complete the phone interview, you move on to our selection day. Then if you have a successful election day, you're able to potentially make the decision not if you want to matriculate within the cohort. So as much as we would love to have 40, 50 new Black teachers this year, there is still a process that we go through. So I like to highlight that as well, because I don't want individuals to think, oh, we're just going to take it. Because again, the goal is qualified, effective teachers within our schools. So one question that comes up, Charles, is why is there only something for Black educators? And why is there only something right now for Black teachers? Share your thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. I mean, I fully believe that there should be more in place for teachers of color, period. Right. I think that,
right.
We're talking a lot about Black educators. If you look at the Latinx community, there are the numbers there are even that there are fewer Latinx educators that are out there. And so that definitely needs to be amplified as well. But the reason why to zero in and focus in on Black educators is because we know the positive effects that Black educators have on kids, on the academic side of school and student performance, not only for Black students that are in the classroom, but even non-Black students are in the classroom. And so the academic gains that happen, but also more importantly, I think the the school climate is changes, right? And I think that's the most important. When you look at student suspension, and when you look at student absenteeism, like there's, you know, when you have a positive climate, where you have the teacher diversity that are that understand, you know, like the students, the community, the school, you know, the way we respond to students, you know, is different. And so, you know, with as the having more Black educators in buildings where you have a higher percentage of Black students is a positive effect and a positive change. And so I think, you know, both like in Kansas City, when you look at the numbers, right, you know, you have like 31% of educators that identify as being Black in a system where more than half of the students are Black, identify as Black. And so like that in and of itself, right, like it's something to be thinking about. Like imagine, you know, and that's not something like if you go to, you know, schools in the suburbs, right, and where you have schools that are predominantly white, like you find school teams that are reflective of the community they're serving.
Right.
And that's not always true, right? Right. When you look at schools that are predominantly serving students of color. And so, you know, that has been the case in the past. And we've seen the positives that have come out of that in the past. And like that is, I think, what we're striving for, a more of a healthy balance within our schools, because we know the positive dynamics that come out of that. And so, you know, that's where there has, I think there continues to need to be more work, right? Like I think with, to say that school has been an inviting and a welcoming place for the Black community, I think that would be a stretch. Like I think it's well documented around just the experiences that students and families have had and communities have had around K-12. And you know, I think one person, I heard somebody talk about this previously as we were getting, you know, when we were talking about this work, right? Yeah, there are students who are walking away out of school, out of 12th grade, that have, you know, that have deep hurts and are scarred by what teachers have done to them. And so, you know, someone likened it to like, how do we convince people that have been scarred to then want to go back and consider doing that to other students and harming other students, right? And so like that, you know, and part of like the BEI work is around working through all of that, both on the recruitment end, through our retention end, so that we can change the narrative of not only the Black educator experience, but the Black student experience within our schools, so that we can have a stronger pipeline in the future. This should not, like, we should be working on this so that 10 years from now, this is not the conversation we're having, right?
Right, correct.
Like, this is like, this is the infusion to get to work, so that later on, we're not trying to solve this problem. This is not a problem for us as a country.
No, that is solid. And you know, one of the things that you mentioned is the fact that, and not necessarily that you mentioned it, but I think it's important to highlight that specifically KCTR, a lot of our work is done within high need schools, high need areas, and the demographics that we see within those schools are typically high in numbers of Black and brown children. So that, again, is another reason that we're doing our work to, again, representation matters for students and plays a large impact on the education process, trying to, again, increase student outcomes. And I think this is a way that we are able to do that. So excellent. Well, thank you, Charles. We actually kind of come up to our time, and I'm going to just, if you have a parting thought that you'd like to share as we conclude this, and I guess I have one as well. If you need to think about yours, I can go with mine. now, but my parting thought is essentially, if you are considering making a transition to the teaching field, let's just have a conversation. And not only that, but we are happy. Since I've been in this role, I've had numerous conversations with alumni and graduates who are all willing and happy to have a conversation and share their experience, not only in education, but even going through the residency program to provide insight and information that might help you. Again, everyone's situation is different. Everyone's circumstances are different. However, one thing I've noticed in my short time within KCTR is the fact that the residents, past and present, that I've talked to, have been willing to share information and knowledge. And if you're one of those individuals who are considering making the jump, just reach out to us. We've just concluded a conversational series that's focused on career changers. So you can go check those out on our YouTube page as well. But the students need, they need you. I'll just leave it at that. Charles?
Yeah, I will piggyback off of everything you just said, Vernon. You know, if you are interested in applying, if you have family who are interested in applying, like share this information with your networks, and encourage people to apply, right? And especially, you know, like people of color, especially Black individuals who are looking to come into the teaching profession. Like, this is happy to have a conversation as well and talk about, you know, this journey and the need. But, you know, our students need us, our community needs us. This is, you know, finding a solution and solving this problem is not, doesn't happen on its own, and it takes it takes all of us to be hands-on with this. We are, you know, as an organization, we have learned a lot in these 5 years, and we, you know, we're continuing to learn and get better at supporting all of our residents, regardless of race or ethnicity. And so we, you know, we're looking at, like, how do we make sure, like, this is that people are effectively prepared and ready to be in the classroom, but also to stay and see themselves to have a career in education and a career in the classroom. You know, that's where our change happens. And there's a lot of great work that's happening in schools across the entire Kansas City community. You know, regardless of what you're hearing on the news about, you know, the teacher workforce and the struggles with reentry and coming back in after students coming back, I will tell you, like, there are teachers who are fired up and ready, and there are schools that are ready to receive kids, and knowing that, like, you can make a difference, and you are the people, like, that we need in our program to come in and make that. So thank you, Vernon, for allowing me to chop it up with you for a little bit and to spend some time to share more about the grant.
Yeah, definitely. And Charles, I appreciate your time this afternoon. I know you would probably much prefer to be outside, hanging out, taking in some sun. But no, this is important work, and I thank you for spending the time to give a little bit more information about it. We've had info sessions about it and things of the sort, but I thought it was very important to have the CEO and president, who is Black, share on this topic as well. So we thank you all for tuning in this afternoon during your lunch hour and engaging with us. For some of those who participated in the comment section, we thank you for joining us. And again, if you have more questions about the initiative itself, you may reach out to myself, Vernon, at kcteach.org. Also, you can visit our website, kcteach.org. So again, we thank you for joining us this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. And join us next Wednesday evening as well, as we will have a panel discussion with some of our residents and alumni as they discuss their experience with the teaching residency. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.